I'm joined now by Todd Rose. He is the author of The End of Average. It's available now, of course, Amazon.com. We're going to have a link to it up on our Facebook page. Todd, how are you doing this afternoon?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, we're very excited about having you. I love the whole idea of the end of average. You know, my wife is a first-grade teacher, and she tries so hard to not put the kids into a little average bell curve. You know, what can I do to help this kid, and this kid learns in a little slightly different way, and this kid needs to stand up in the back of the room because he works better that way. And that's the kind of thing I think we've got to be able to do throughout our lives to help people reach their potential. That's basically what you're really hitting on, right?
That's it in a nutshell. I mean, great teachers try to do this all the time, and we have just built a system that works against that at every single level.
It really does, especially for kids who are super active and don't like sitting still for 8 hours a day, like so many of us were in school. But how do you – let's start us from a parent idea, okay? Because I love how you say in your book, you know, that everybody has these different distinct ways to learn, unique patterns of behavior. I agree with all that. You're the parent, and you've got a kid who learns differently than a lot of the kids. What do you do to help them?
So I think this will sound simple, but I think it's by far the most important first step, which is that as a parent, you're teaching your kid how to think about themselves, right? And they're going to internalize that view. And if you let the society give them this, you know, you're this type of kid and you rank this way, instead of teaching them how to see themselves as individuals, I mean, that's the biggest key. And I actually think the insights from the book are helpful in that regard.
Oh, I do too. Let's take a kid who's maybe not super great at the standardized test. Mm-hmm. But how do you get him to funnel towards his strengths?
So I think it's about making sure that the kid is getting exposure to a wide range of different kinds of opportunities. And as a parent, it's really can be worrisome when you think you're trying to help your kid be just like everyone else, only better, right? Play the standardized game. But knowing that the more opportunities they have to try and find their purpose and their strengths, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, I love that. And let them try a bunch of different things. You know, my dad always said, you know, let's try a bunch of stuff, see what you like. There's a difference between quitting and learning that, hey, I don't really like this, right? And so try a bunch of things, find out what you like, and then really pursue it hard.
That's exactly right. And I love your point about that doesn't mean quitting just because you don't like something. You know, learn to finish what you started, but sample and know that if you figure out that thing that just clicks, life is so much better for you.
Absolutely. The book is called The End of Average, How We Succeed in a World That Values Sameness. Todd Rose is the author. He's the director of the Mind, Brain, and Education program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I love this. He leads the Laboratory for Individuality. I love that. Let's talk about it as if I'm a boss or I'm a team leader at a business, and I have to put my team together. And, you know, we're always told, well, look at the guys that have the great grades and the guys that have been to the good schools. And the research is now showing that, hey, that's not always indicative of what's going to happen here. If I'm the guy trying to put a team together, how should I put my team together?
That's great. You're right. And as someone from Harvard, I hate to say, it turns out not to matter that much, right? But we're finding that these reliance on simple one-dimensional metrics like what's your GPA, what's your SAT score, how prestigious is the school you went to, they really fail to predict who's going to be successful in your company. I would direct people, if you're putting a team together, there is an approach called performance-based hiring. Lou Adler invented it. That's all about understanding the performance in context and then finding people that match that, rather than these silly kind of job descriptions like you should be a good communicator, as if that's a thing.
Right. A good people person. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's what we need. That's very cool. So I'll look that up, performance-based hiring, Lou Adler, if you want to find out more information about that. And then, Todd, the other part of this is I agree with so much of what's in your book. I'm sure there are a lot of people who agree with that, but they're in college, let's say, and they're just doing okay. Maybe they're a CB student, but they're good at some things, but they're like, okay, when I go out to get a job, they're going to ask me, you know, all the things we just talked about that are the normal, average things you look at. How do I present myself to an employer who maybe isn't on the same page with you and me on this?
Yeah, so these people that are graduating now are kind of in this transition period, which is tough. But the first thing is, I would say you go all the way back to Adam Smith, right? Capitalism is about comparative advantage. So you better find the thing you're really good at and better than other people, and double down on that, no matter what people are trying to, make you conform. But ultimately, I would say this, that if you lead with that, if you know who you are, you know your strengths and weaknesses, the context in which you excel and struggle, and you can present that case to the employer, I think you're in good shape. And the truth is, if an employer doesn't appreciate that individuality, it's probably not a good fit anyway.
Have you found that the people who, and like you say, nobody's really average, but let's say the people that are kind of way on the outside of the average bell curve, are they usually better at starting their own company or creating their own job or not? Yeah,
actually, we see this. It's for people that are on the edge, their jaggedness, their individuality is so extreme. They're the ones that realize immediately that the status quo system is just nonsense, right? Like, it just doesn't fit. And instead of having this herd mentality, they're going to break free from that. And what you see is that they don't buy into the status quo, so they can see the opportunities and they can develop innovative companies in ways that most people simply can't.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. The book is The End of Average. Todd Rose with me here discussing it. And, along those lines of getting the regular job, I've noticed the only time, and I've had a lot of jobs, Todd, probably too many than I probably should admit. But, I had a hard time keeping a job because I was always getting bored with it. But what I noticed was the only time anybody ever asked for my transcripts was my very first job. After that, nobody seemed to care what my GPA was. They wanted to know, what have you done? Yep.
It's all about performance. And, what's funny is you and I have the same background. I've had more jobs than I could tell you, and more minimum wage jobs after I dropped out of high school. But it's really about, you're right. So that first transcript, that might make it tough, the first job, but it's about performance, and it's about performance in context. So, figure out the context in which you thrive and stay there.
Yeah, and you might use that first job just as the beginning of what your next job is going to be if you have a really horrible transcript.
I think that's exactly right.
Todd, last thing here. I want you to have an opportunity. Is there one thing out of this book, if people only remember one thing, what would you want them to remember?
That there literally is not an average person, and we've built an entire society around the idea that there is. And the problems of opportunity in society, the problems of economic and personal success, all come back down to this nonsensical belief in the myth of the average person.
Love it. Hey, thanks for the book. Thanks for the time. The End of Average, Todd Rose. You can find it at Amazon.com, of course, and we've got the link up on our Facebook page. Todd, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, man. All the best.